Hello, everybody. Hope you guys are doing well today. And I want to talk a little bit more about the reality of the salary cap in the NFL. Because I feel like sometimes people forget this a little bit. They don't really understand how the salary cap works in practice in the NFL. Yes, it's a hard cap. Yes, you can't go over it. Yes, it's not like these other sports where there are a whole bunch of ways to break it and pay taxes, or you can break it because of some rule that allows you to break it in certain circumstances. Yeah, the NFL cap is definitely harsher on teams than other sports, but that doesn't mean that the league isn't making it easy, and that's a double negative, I know, I'm sorry, but the league is still making it easy for you to circumvent the cap as long as you're willing to pay the penalty down the line. And I want to talk about that a little bit as it regards this cap space the Seahawks have created with the move they made yesterday with restructuring Jamal Adams. Um, there's a lot of people in around the internet, honestly, like a lot of people are talking about we should trade for Chris Jones, we should trade for DeForest Buckner, we should trade for these big ticket guys. And to be clear, I don't think the Seahawks are going to do that. I don't. And I'm not even here to necessarily promote it because I have mixed feelings about doing something like that. I really am not convinced that trading for a guy in the middle to, back end of his career is the right thing to do, especially when they're going to be so expensive. But I want to talk about this in the context of can it happen? Because there are also some people out there who point out, and it's reasonable to think along these lines, and this may absolutely give the team pause, but the idea is okay, we've got anywhere from 8.5 to 10 million in cap space. That's the estimate, as near as I can tell. Somewhere between 8.5 to 10 million in cap space. So they look at a guy like a DeForest Buckner that a lot of Seahawks fans are hot to trot on. And they go, well, his cap hit in 2023 is 17 and a quarter million. That's way more than 10 million, so we can't trade for him. Now, obviously, that ignores the fact that we would only be on the hook for the base salary because the Colts still have to pay his bonus. But even still, it's 13 and three quarters. So we still couldn't afford that. And yes, that's true, but there are many elements here at play that make that not really matter that much. And I want to go over some stuff that needs to be considered when you're talking about trading for anybody. Trading for Buckner, trading for Jones, trading for Aaron Donald, trading for whoever you want to trade for. Couple things. First of all, if you trade for DeForest Buckner, he's probably going to want an extension, and you're probably going to want to extend him. So this is not the contract he's going to be on if you trade for him. And that goes double, quadruple for Chris Jones, who we know wants a new contract. That's why he might get traded. A lot of these guys who might get traded are because they want a new contract. DeForest Buckner, just using him as the example, has 2 years left on his deal, 2023, 2024. So he's probably going to want an extension that gives him some long-term security. He's probably going to want to add a few years to that deal. He signed a 4-year deal back in 2020, or a 4-year extension back in 2020 with the Colts when he was traded there. And that extension has nearly reached its end, and he's probably going to be looking for some kind of long-term security with his new team if he does come here. So you can forget about this contract anyway, kind of. Obviously, it's going to be appending stuff to the end of this contract, don't get me wrong, but the numbers are going to be completely scrambled around. Now, if DeForest Buckner got traded and extended, what would the extension look like? I don't know. That's really hard to determine. Like DeForest Buckner, his extension years ago was 4 years, 84 million. He's probably going to want a little more than that, right? I mean, years have passed. He's still a good player, but at the same time, we actually had quite a few interior defensive linemen sign extensions that kicked in this offseason. Quinn and Williams is a great example. He signed his extension. It was 4 years, 96 million. Is Quinn and Williams the same as DeForest Buckner? I don't think so. I think Quinn and Williams is better. Is he way better? Maybe not. Are they on the same tier? That's tough. But is DeForest Buckner going to want an extension in the same area as Quinn and Williams? Maybe a tiny bit less, maybe something like 4 years, 92 million? Maybe. And look, you might hear that and be even less interested in trading for DeForest Buckner than that. But just understand that this cap hit number can easily be changed, and it most certainly would be if we did trade for him. Because here's the other thing that is really important to keep in mind here. Contracts are not linear. Very rarely will you find a contract that has any degree of linearity to it. Occasionally a team can afford to do it, and they will do it, but most of the time they don't. Like DeForest Buckner's contract in terms of cap hits with the Colts was actually remarkably linear. In fact, the biggest cap hit he had was way back in 2020, which is very odd, but typically speaking, you will not see this, especially for a team that is going all in trying to win. They're going to try to get those initial cap hits way down, and you see this all the time with contracts that get signed right now. Great example being Justin Herbert. He signed one of the biggest contracts ever this offseason. $262.5 million over 5 years, so average annual salary of $52.5 million. But is he getting charged $52 million or $52.5 million against the cap every year? No, not at all. This first year, it's $8 million, eight and a half, and then the next year, it's 19.3. It doesn't balloon up until 2025 when it gets up to like 37.3. That's still not anywhere close to 52 and a half, by the way. Then 46, 58, 71, 50. Then it balloons up. But these first 2 years are downright affordable. Like nothing to it, really. Now, Herbert's getting more money than that for these years, but that's how much the cap hit is for those seasons. So you can trade for a guy, extend their contract, and then shove most of the cap hits to future seasons. It's not fun. It's not necessarily something that you want to do, but it's something that you might have to do if you're going for a Super Bowl. And some people are going to say, oh, this is an extreme example because it's a quarterback. But you can see it for other players too, like Roquan Smith, who signed a big extension this offseason with the Ravens. 5 years, $100 million, $20 million a year. First year cap hit is $9 million, less than half. Then it goes up to 13.5. Then it gets up into the areas where it's like 20 plus. So these first 2 years, much less than the actual average salary. So these are the ways you can find maneuverability within the cap. So understand that if you trade for Chris Jones wants $30 million a year, supposedly. That doesn't mean the cap hit for that first year is going to be $30 million. It could be $10 million, honestly. If you really wanted to do that, you could do that. I've seen contracts with an average annual value of like 22, 23 million, and then the first year cap hit is like 5 million. If you can dream it, you can do it. And I'm not saying this is a great idea, but if push comes to shove, you can throw void years into contracts to make extra room. Like, let's say we can't get to where we want to get exactly with Buckner because we only have, maybe we would only have like 7 million to spare under the cap, and he would want, and we would have to give him a little more than that in salary in 2023. You can throw a void year into DK Metcalf's deal or Tyler Lockett's deal or Michael Dixon's deal. You can go around to veterans that you have, throw void years in their contract. The player doesn't really mind, so I'm not saying it's a great idea, but if you really have to create cap space like that, you can always do stuff like that. There's always money to be found. So I hope this made my point. I hope this kind of illustrates this idea of how you can basically dance around the salary cap, which we saw it in our division a couple years ago with the Rams. That Rams team crippled themselves to make that Super Bowl run. Absolutely crippled themselves. And they're feeling it right now. I think this year they have like 76, 77 million dead. They're eating so much dead money on these guys they lost. They had no money to improve the team last year. Think about that. Think of all the guys they lost last offseason in free agency. Guys like Greg Gaines, guys like A'Shawn Robinson, guys like, well, they traded Allen Robinson. They traded Jalen Ramsey. They lost a Taylor Rapp. They lost basically everybody on the team who was eligible to be lost. Anybody on that team who was a free agent left. They didn't really retain anybody, and they didn't bring other people in because there was no money. But that's because they did extreme things in previous years. Was it worth it? I think so. They won the Super Bowl. But the fact that they were able to get away with the stuff they got away with over the last few years should illustrate how possible this stuff is. So, I'm not saying expect something like this, but just know it's possible. Just know that it's very possible to put together a contract that's like 4 years, 92 million, which is 23 million. Yeah, it's 23 million per year, but that first year cap hit can only be like 7, 8 million. It's not that hard. Happens fairly frequently in this sport, and it kind of has to happen. A lot of these teams don't have enough cap space to fit in guys otherwise. So, anybody that you want to trade for, it's possible pretty much. Short of a quarterback, those guys might be a little too expensive to think about. Not that we need to do that anyway, but short of trading for one of these massive contract quarterbacks, most things are possible. So I'm not saying it's going to happen, but don't let this make you think it can't happen. This is not the part that makes it so it can't happen. The money, you can find the money. All right. See you guys later. Go Hawks. Hope you learned something. Hope I explained myself well. And I'm not trying to get anybody's hopes up. Truthfully, I think it's far more likely we trade for a more mid-level guy like Grover Stewart, or we just sign a decent depth piece on the defensive line like Matt Ioannidis. But it's not impossible to dream bigger than that. All right. See you later.